Exciting.
Welcome to ThNOT, Thursday Night on Tour. My name is Nick Cartell. I am on the national tour of Les Miserables. I play Jean Valjean, and I use my Thursday nights as more of like an educational forum to give the folks out there a peek behind the curtain to kind of see what this life on the road and life in show business is all about. And I'm very fortunate tonight to have one of my good friends, someone that I grew up doing theater with, Miss Natalie Charlè Ellis, with me this evening.
Hey.
Hello,
Thank
Natalie.
you for having me, Nick. I am thrilled and honored.
So lately we've been actually having I get a lot of questions about, like, do you have to go to school to do this? Do you have to have a BFA or a degree in musical theater to do this? Like, and the answer is no.
Yeah.
There's no right way. There's no wrong way into this industry. And you are somebody who is very successful. And I know that you are pursuing a degree. You've done classes towards your degree, but you do not have a degree in theater. And yet here you are getting ready to start rehearsals for your third Broadway show.
Not to toot my own horn, but it's my fourth. But
oh my gosh, you're right. It's your fourth. It is your fourth Broadway show. You're right. Oh my gosh.
I hate being that idiot. I was going to say that.
Your fourth Broadway show. All right.
There's a pandemic in the middle.
Miss Natalie Charlè Ellis. Natalie, will you please let everybody know out there, what is your resume, girl?
Okay, girl. So my Broadway shows, I made my Broadway debut in Les Mis, actually. So Nick and I also have that in common. The 2014 revival. I then left that to do School of Rock. And then I did Beetlejuice on Broadway, both at the Winter Garden. And then we had a little hiatus for the Pandy. And then came back to Beetlejuice at the Marquee. And now I'm about to start rehearsals for Death Becomes Her. And very, very, very excited. I get to understudy both Megan Hilty and Jen Samart. So I get to use every skill set that I have.
And when I tell you, this woman is so amazingly talented. Not only can she sing anything, but she's also hysterically funny, which it is very hard to find a great comedic actress that can do what she does. So, like, these companies that have cast her are very lucky to have her. Yeah, let me just say that.
Bye. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
But I wanted to talk to you because, you know, like I said, I get a lot of questions about, like, do I have to do this? Like, do I have to have a degree in order to do this? And I know that you are somebody that you're like, I have seen your posts when like Playbill does these top schools that are, you know, on Broadway and stuff like that. And yet you are somebody that has made a career out of being on Broadway, and you didn't go to a top school. You don't have that BFA, but yet you are still working in this industry. So what do you think were, like, is there a reason why, or is it just like, you're just, here we go. I know this is what I want to do. I'm going to do it regardless.
Well, I'm really glad you brought me on, because I think this is such a thing that I even struggled with when I was first moving to New York. You have such this insecurity. You feel like you're missing something without a BFA. Like, so you have this paranoia.
It all froze. I don't know if anybody else out there is seeing this, but it completely froze for me on my end. All I heard was,
oh no! And it was amazing words.
The most amazing words.
The insight I was giving.
The monologue. Good darling, the monologue. Can you give those words again?
Yeah. So basically what I was saying is, I'm glad you brought me on, because this is something that I know I struggled with moving to New York without a BFA on my resume. Like, you think that you're missing out, and I mean, you don't have the automatic, you do have some connections with casting directors that went to Michigan or like went to NYU, but you can also make connections in other ways by taking classes, by there's something called pay to play, where you can go to places like Actors Connection and One-on-One, which are studios here in New York, and you can actually audition for these casting directors and directors. So there are ways to get into the industry and make connections without that on your resume. But I've started performing when I was a kid, so I always knew this is what I wanted to do. I was in tap ballet combo. I started voice lessons at 7. I did community theater. I went to charter schools for performing arts for junior high and high school. So I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And this was a time in 1990 where there was no internet really. So like researching schools and applying online wasn't a thing. And my family had no money. So I didn't know how to do it. We didn't have a college admissions person on staff at my school because it was small. So I didn't know what to do. So actually, remember, Nick, spring break of my senior year in high school, we came to New York and we did straw hat auditions. It's like where a lot of summer stock and cruise ships and stuff audition. We just wanted to try it just to see what it was like. And that's my first trip to New York. So I'll never forget that. And I booked a cruise ship out of that. So I didn't go to school, and I booked a cruise ship right out of high school. So I started working. And it was the smartest decision I ever made. But that was my journey. There is no right or wrong. Some people need to slowly transition into adulthood by leaving their house and living somewhere for 4 years, like, you know, like in a dorm setting and easing into having to pay bills because it's the worst. Adulting is not easy. So I've trained and I've taken classes, and after cruise ships, I went back to New York, Arizona, and got my equity card. And then I spent 5-6 years saving money. And then at 27, I moved to New York with 12 grand in the bank so I could take classes and start networking. Like that was my
$2, one bag. Yeah.
It didn't feel much different than that. Terrifying, but like I'm so grateful that's what I did. And I came with no debt. I had no student loans. Like so many of my friends in shows, I'm sure you too, were almost half their salary is going to paying off their debts by the time they finally book a job that pays, because this industry, it takes a long time and sometimes never to get a Broadway salary.
Correct.
There's not many jobs.
And the cost of living is just going up. Ooh, that's a whole other podcast. That's a whole other like.
Say that for the next ThNOT.
Cost of living on Broadway. Oh Lord.
That should be a snot. You need a cocktail with that one.
Please. What do you think was the most valuable piece of advice that you were given?
Don't say no. You have to say yes to everything. Like I've done every concert, every reading, every like there's this thing called BMI where writers take classes here and they need singers to sing their stuff. Half of the first things that I did when I moved here and casting directors I met all were from performing in this BMI thing. It's volunteering your time. It's having coffee with anyone that wants to have coffee. And it's not being afraid to vouch for yourself. Like I can't tell you how many emails my agent says you can't get an appointment. I look at who the creative team is. I look at who's involved. I send an email to that person and like, I'm interested. Is this right for me? Because I'd love to be seen. And then the next thing you know, my agent's calling me with an audition. So it's like always being your own, you represent yourself, no matter who your manager or your agent or your college or any, you're still your own you're your own business card. You walk into the room and like, this is what you got. And you have to be confident, like always, and never stop training, never stop learning. And you do not know everything. And the person you're working with will teach you something. Like I watch in rehearsal, I don't sit and play on my phone or anything. I'm watching the actors work and take direction. And like you gain so much from just your scene partner. Like I think it's fun. It just doesn't stop. The knowledge just keeps coming.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's also like, you know, I think a lot of young kids getting out of college, I say kids because they are, getting out of college, you know, they're like, okay, well, I've done my schooling, I'm done. And I'm like, no, there's so much more that you have to learn. Like you did your schooling in your 4 years or whatever it was, whatever your school was in that little box, but there's so many other things that you need to learn now that you are in the real world.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I know that you are somebody that, I've watched grow over the course of your career with all the different things that you've picked up, and like the different things you've learned. So I know that now you're getting ready to understudy, and I know that you did the out of town tryout for
Mhm.
Death Becomes Her, and you understudied two very, very funny women, and you got to go on last minute.
Mm.
Last minute. Like, so
Mhm.
can you talk about that experience? Can you talk about the preparedness, then saying no to saying yes to everything, and how that prepared you for that moment?
Oh dear God. This is a job that I didn't know existed when I was doing theater, like when we were in Arizona. You don't know. So you're watching, you're learning, you have music rehearsal. You like we didn't have time for a put in. We were down to the
Right.
last week and we kept
Yep.
making changes up until the creative team left. And then we only were open for 2 weeks. It was all previews because it was an out of town tryout. So it was trying to get as much done before coming here. So the understudies, we didn't have costumes, didn't have wigs, didn't have a put in. Like we ran some stuff on stage, hadn't done the fight choreography, hadn't done any of it. And it was a matinee on a Wednesday 2 show day. And Jen Simard is the person, she's the most consistent person I've ever met in my entire life. So when she sounds a little different, you're like, so I'm in the wings, like
What's
starting to
happening?
watch. And I go home and I'm like, I'm going to go home and I'm just going to drink tea and I'm just going to think about things. And then sure enough, 5 p.m. they're like, we don't know, but maybe if you could just come to the theater and Megan Hilty's already here. So if you can just run stuff just in case. And they're buying you some stuff at Nordstrom and the show is at 7:30. And I was like, oh, okay, okay. So I go and you just don't have time to be scared. I was like, I've done the work. I've run the show every day and sung it full out in my hotel room every day. I've like watched, I've done everything that I can do, like as much work as I personally can do. So I just have to go. I just can't think about it. It's like, that's also the best advice I was ever given. Like, just be fearless. Like, sometimes the best choices I've made were mistakes. And like, it ended up being the best thing I ever did. And that's as an understudy, you
Yeah.
have to be okay with flopping and not judging yourself and moving on. Like, I'm so good at noting
100%.
myself and then being like, think about it later. Otherwise, I'm going to keep screwing up. Just think about it later. And I found myself just
Yep.
laughing. I was doing like Fight Call with Megan Hilty, and I was just laughing and finding joy in it. And I just went on stage and I don't remember half of what I did, but no one looked at me like I was insane. And it just happened because I had done it. It was somehow in my body, in my 10 by 12 hotel room. I did all the work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
got to do it four
I think that,
times, which is
I
great.
exactly. You got to have a run at it.
Yeah.
I think that when I think about, and talking about like school, your school was working.
Yeah.
Your school was like doing all of these different jobs and taking the stuff that was right and just kind of throwing away the stuff that was bad, which is what you do in school anyway, right? And you were working with some of the best in the industry and building that resume.
Mm-hmm.
That I think is just inspiring, and it's so cool to see that now you are at a point where, like you were talking about, you are making these fearless steps. You're just jumping off and taking leaps because you trust yourself, because you've done the work.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've done the work, and I think that that's
Yeah.
really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
as I was like learning in my school, being like on jobs and like I did cruise ships. I worked at Tokyo Disney also with Nick. Like Nick and I just kind of follow each other everywhere. And I and so I came to New York not only with money but with a resume. Like I knew how to do 8 shows a week, which you don't learn in school. I learned stamina. I learned style. I learned how to create multiple roles, not just scenes and songs for class. I had multiple directors, multiple things instead of one teacher. It's just a very different way. And I think because I didn't go to school and I did this, worked at different theaters, worked everywhere around the world, I became more versatile. because of that. And
Yeah.
I didn't have school on my resume, but I had multiple roles and multiple theaters on my resume, which is
Right.
just a different thing to bring. But it's still, no matter where you go, there's like being in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people, working hard, not being an asshole. Like you just have to be a nice person. And
Yes.
and I can't tell you how many things have been like, you were recommended for this job. There was a role and someone recommended you. And it's like someone I did a show with 10 years ago who was an assistant and I didn't even meet them, but they recommended me because I was nice and fun. And like, it's still a lot. And it's also a lot of luck. I won't lie. This business is a lot of
right time, right place.
And school doesn't give you that. Like jobs don't give you that. It's like this. It's just keep going, and you will be in the right place at the right time, and it will be the right thing. Whatever your journey is, it will happen. I truly believe that.
So somebody asked a question with regards to you going on. How did you and Megan work as a team on stage when it was so sudden?
She is the best. She is the silliest, most respectful. She also was an understudy. So when you've been an understudy, you get it. You get the fear. You get how it's really not fair that you're not rehearsed. It's not fair to carry a show and have no rehearsal. So it's also understudying. Like she understands that. But she went with all of my choices. And like I completely went up on a line, and it's one that we say together. And we're like, get Ernest, time for the and she just looked at me and started laughing. And then we have to repeat it 3 times. And I still could never get it. And we're just cackling as we run off stage. Like it was, she made herself available. Chris Sieber also was like amazing. And like, just, they love new choices. But also I think that's kind of the best thing about comedians. Comedians kind of go with the flow and enjoy things being thrown at them, honestly. But no, she's the best. Like she seems awesome on stage, and she's even more awesome off stage. Like I have to say that.
That's what we love to hear. That's what we love to hear. But we love to hear from you more this evening. Natalie, I can't thank you enough for joining me on this live and just sharing your insight about how, I think what I've taken away, and I hope that others have, is that your working professionally was your school. Working the way that you did and the way that you did was your schooling. That was your version of school. And I think that that is so inspiring for those out there that, maybe college is not for them. Maybe school is not for them, but there is still a life in this industry, and you can still be incredibly successful in this industry without doing that. So congratulations. I cannot wait to see
Nick.
Death Becomes Her. We're so excited to see it. So
it's so good.
So everybody, if you don't already, please go over to Instagram, follow Natalie Charlè Ellis. You can find her on Instagram. And thanks again for tuning into ThNOT. And we will see you next week here on the Barricade, here on tour. And tune in on Saturday night to SNOT with Haley as we are counting down, because she only has 3 more snots left before she leaves us, departs the Barricade. I know. But Natalie, thank you again, my friend. I love you. I miss you. I love you. And I will see you soon.
Sounds good. Bye, you guys.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.